Welcome back to Total Freedom Radio with Rina Lynn, show that's all about raising the bar of knowledge, healing hurting people, and spiritual warfare. Tonight we are back with our ancient paganism class, part 9, and we will be talking about archaeology, archaeoastronomy, megaliths, Nephilim architecture, and we'll touch on the priest of Baal just a little bit. Hope you're enjoying this class. At the time I'm recording this, part 7 is over 500 watchers. We've had a few comments, few interesting ones. If you want to check that out, drop your own comment in there and let me know how you're liking this class and if you're getting anything out of it. It's always nice to have feedback, and I generally um, teach it in person, so it would be really nice to hear that feedback. Um, I want you to go over to rinalyn.com. Check out my new book series, Prepare for the End. I'm about to come out with part 6, and if you're behind, catch up. It's a really great series that is taking into consideration all of this stuff that I'm teaching. We're having the kingdom of darkness against the kingdom of heaven, and we're having these same issues that they had way back in the beginning. So why don't we just get started? Last week, we talked a little bit about magic and broke down the difference in ceremonial magic and non-ceremonial magic. So I'll just go over that in slide. The name for an occult practitioner, sorcerer, magician, those are just general words. If they're practicing non-ceremonial magic, you have the diviners that sees the future through trances, observer of times, we would call an astrologer. We have enchanters, and they charm serpents and animals to do their bidding. And then we have just a charmer that makes talismans and amulets. If they're doing ceremonial magic, this means that they are contacting spirits to do their bidding rather than just going into their own spirit. So we have wizards, which are spirits that speak through possessed medium. We have a necromancer who speaks to the dead in his lucid dreams. And we have one with a familiar spirit. This is a spirit to materialize, causes a spirit to materialize inside a circle, and some use a Nephilim, excuse me, having all kinds of trouble with that. Some use a teraphim a skull, which we talked about last week, what that was, where they got it, how they were made, and why they did it. So let's go on. All right. Tonight we're going to again talk about astrology. So let's go back to pre-flood astrology just for a moment so we can see the difference. Pre-flood, pre, pre-flood astrology is centered on observing and calculating times. It's based on a predetermined set of rules. So one would calculate the next time one would be able to contact a god or goddess and work a magic ritual. For instance, a special spell might only work on Halloween or Yule. This idea is still seen in the myth that on Halloween, ghosts and spirits are more likely to come back and stronger, and magic rites work better if you do them on that night. And the whole purpose was behind this is because rather than going to God for their answers, they were going to the fallen ones or their ancestral gods that they created, which they thought would shorten their time to become a god or goddess in their own right. But they only had certain times a year that they were allowed to contact them. So it was real important to know how to determine that time of year, which we'll talk about in just a second. All right, now let's look at post-flood astrology. So it's this big old long word here, archaeoastronomy. And there's two different spellings here I've got for you. This is the interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary study of how people in the past have understood the phenomena in the sky, how they use these phenomena, and what role the sky played in their cultures. And the study of ancient astronomical knowledge of tribal, aboriginal, and extinct cultures is what this whole word is for. And then we got places like the Yucatan in Mexico. We've got Chichén-Itzá, the Kukulkan Pyramid. Now, if you'll notice, if you're watching this on video, you'll see up the one side, you can see the serpent crawling up there. That happens on certain times of the year when the sun or the moon is just right, and that's how they know when they can go and petition their God. If you'll notice down on the bottom, we've got all these skulls that are stacked up. They have found more skulls in that area than any other pagan worship places. And then on the right, you've got, it looks like a little dragon there. That is Kukulkan himself, or we would call him Quetzalcoatl. Okay, you've got Teotihuacán, the Pyramid of the Sun. Same thing. It's got some artwork in there. You see down on the bottom middle where the Indians are still doing the pagan ceremonies now. You've got Quetzalcoatl, the stone dragon coming out of the building. And if you'll see the steps on the right, it's usually a stepped pyramid. This goes all the way back to the beginning. The sign of a stepped pyramid goes back to the Tower of Babel, which was also a stepped pyramid, and they're all over the world. We think about Egypt and their pyramids, but we don't realize it is studied a few years back, and if you'll do it, you'll find this too. They're much bigger pyramids than there, and they are literally scattered worldwide. So why? Why did that happen? All right, let's go to Baalbeck, Lebanon. And if you'll notice, there are several things on this little map that I've got for you. Baalbeck isn't just one place, there's several things there. They have the Baalbeck Temple, they have the Temple of Venus there, Palmyra, one that I can't even pronounce, I'll try to, Sayida Kuala Shrine. They have the Baalbek Roman ruins and the Temple of Jupiter. And again, these are giant megaliths. You'll see down on the bottom left the stone of the pregnant woman that is 1,650 tons. This is a cut stone that is 64 feet by 19.6 feet by 18 feet. They have no idea how they did this, and if I remember correctly, I didn't re-look this up to make sure, but I think they found one even bigger than that just a few years back. All of these megalithic structures have these giant stones that no one knows how they moved into place, how they got the stone moved across the land, and most of them are so tight that even without any mortar, you can't stick a piece of paper between them. Right, we've got Gobekli Tepe. This is in Turkey, and it has a 6,000 years before Stonehenge, they had this, and there's a little thing down on the bottom says "Losing Your Head" at Gobekli Tepe. This was some, teraphim that were found. We talked about those last week. And, on the bottom right, you'll see a, bust of Baal, the Baal of that area. Right, we have Gaza, Egypt, and again, here we have the giant pyramid, we have some of the other pyramids, we have statues of the pharaohs, we have the Sphinx. And again, this giant pyramid at Gaza is aligned perfectly in a way that they can't do today. It's had very little settling after all these thousands of years and all the rains and different things that's went there, and they still cannot figure out how it was done. These are some very, very interesting, gigantic places that people have been intrigued by for millennia. All right, everybody knows about Stonehenge. This is in England, and there's several different pictures there. Now, if you'll go look down on the bottom left, this is the one that I chose to put on the thumbnail slide for a particular reason. Do you see how just as the sun's setting, you can see that it perfectly aligns in the center? Okay, this is some of the purpose of these giant megalithic buildings. At each one of them, there is a place that something shows up at a time of year that it doesn't otherwise, or there's a certain day or night of the year that there is a central place, a tiny circle, whatever it is, where the sun or the moon perfectly aligns. And this, they didn't have clocks back then. So this is their way of knowing when it was okay. Remember, they went 4 times in the year to have these festivals and they did there. This is how they knew when it was time to do that. Hey, we have these in America too. We have American Stonehenge in Salem, New Hampshire. Let me get my bigger one up here and look at it, so I can see things I can't see in this little square. Alright, if you'll notice down on the bottom left, it's got the 2 slanted, stones, and then it's got the circle in the middle. This is one of those places that the sun, the moon, whichever one they're looking for, will shine right through that circle. And you'll notice up above that, that it has, it has the stone circle in the center with that almost looks like the witchcraft circle where they can do ceremonies. You've got the stack of the rocks. A lot of times they're said to that Bigfoot does this. So it's interesting to me that they have one there as well. They have a very short obelisk on top or obelisk that we'll talk about in just a little bit. They've got a arch over here on the right, and that is a sign of the goddess. Down on the bottom right, we have the quartered circle that we had already talked about, and it's got the little stations around it with things that are, I'm sure there's little notes there if you went there and read it. Down in the bottom center, you've got where someone has left a sacrifice to this god or goddess that they believe that they're going there to contact, excuse me. Okay, now if you look at this next slide. We are seeing a picture of some of the altars. And I don't know if this is something that they painted in as a recreation or what, but you can see in the top middle where the actual grooves into the stone where the blood ran and then ran off to wherever they needed it to be. You'll see looks like a person with an open belly that I don't know if they did fire there or added s- um, sacrifices there, some offerings that they brought to the goddess. Over on your bottom right, you're going to see it looks like a disc with rays coming out of it. This is actually in alignment in with other megaliths across the world. It goes straight to England to Stonehenge. It goes all the way across to Baalbeck, Lebanon. And did a study on that one time. If you'll see up here on the right, I've got the work of David Flynn. I've got the David Flynn collection. I've also got his book just on Cydonia, and those are fascinating reads where he has done a lot of work into this. David's gone on now to be with the Lord, but his work is still standing there. And if you don't know where to get that, go to stevequail.com and you can find them there. That's where I bought mine. And I'm a person who loves to look into some of these things. And so his work is incredible, I think. Okay, here's some more. We have bottom right, we have a Spanish Stonehenge. Right above that, we've got Sacsayhuaman near Cusco in Peru. Beside that, we have another ancient arch here. Below that, we have the Temple of Bacchus, and over on the left, you're just going to see random things. But again, look at that. That looks like a heart shape. It's actually two stones beside each other. But notice how the moon rests right in that center, the top of the heart. That's what I'm talking about. That's another way that they knew. Okay, today's the day. Tonight's the night. Down the bottom left, you've got France's Stonehenge called the Karnak stones, and I do believe the ones on the top, that is a blow up of a portion of that. It's been a while since I've made this. That's about the best that I can do. All right, I work all over East Texas. I've sold insurance over here for several years, and I've heard lots and lots of interesting stories. When I'm talking with people around their table, talking about their life insurance needs, their mortgage protection needs, whatever it is, college growth for their children, flipping annuity for them when they retire, whatever it is. We have quite some time. We talk about all kinds of interesting things. So I found out there's some things here in Texas as well. Here is somewhere around a place called Gilmer or Hawkins. Someone told me about this, and I Googled it and found these pictures. It's called Standing Stones or the Texas Stonehenge. Very, very interesting. I'd like to see this. Makes me wonder who put it there and why did they put it there? Does it go all the way back to the beginning, what some of the other ones were, or just something somebody was interested in doing for whatever reason? Find it incredibly interesting question. Another thing I found is over in another part of Texas that it looks like Stonehenge too, and in Easter Island Head. This is Hunt, Texas. And, I find this pretty interesting too. This is a place I'd like to go out there, and again, it begs the question, this had to be rather expensive. It had to be a pretty good endeavor to bring stones this big to have a Easter Island head placed out there. So again, was it just something interesting? Do they charge money so people can see this? I don't know. I might run down there one day and see. But I find it interesting that the same old things are being created into modern day. What did the Lord say? As in the days of Noah? Hmm. Kind of begs the question of why? Who spent this much money and what was the purpose? Okay, I have been up in this area. This is the Serpent Mounds in Ohio. And if you'll look on here, you can see either in the black and white photo, the drawing, or the green one, this is a serpent mound that goes all over the top of this hill, and it's opening its mouth and swallowing an egg. Now, if you'll go down in there, there's some incredible work on this. In fact, I met this man named Fritz Zimmerman when I went to L.A. Marzulli and Russ Disdar's very first Nephilim Mound conference up in this area. Fascinating conference, learned a lot of stuff. I have this book, The Nephilim Chronicles, and I don't have the other one too yet, but working on that. And I've done some fascinating study with this. He studied mounds all over the Ohio Valley. And if you've not looked at his work, I suggest that you get it because even the the math in it is extraordinary. There's had to be something behind all this. I love the way L.A. Marzulli always says that. Who gets up on a Monday morning and says, "Hey, everybody, grab your basket. We're going to spend years and years here, and we're going to move dirt, 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 and we're going to make this mound." Why did they do that? There had to be a better purpose. Here is the Nazca lines in Peru. Now, if you'll notice all these pictures, there's literally like tons of them out there. I did a lot of study on this too, right after I first got the internet, and there's just fascinating pictures. But you know what? You can't see them from the air. They didn't have airplanes back then that we know of. So again, it begs the question, why did they do this? How did they do this? And who got up on a Monday morning and said, "Hey, let's go build a giant picture on the ground that we'll never be able to see. Maybe someday somebody'll see it, and, we'll figure out how to get it perfect." Kinda puts me in mind of our modern crop circles. These megaliths and Nephilim architecture, as LA calls them, can be found in his On the Trail of the Nephilim books. I've got all of these, and they're just simply fascinating. He has done some wonderful research on this and actually held one of the Paracas Peru skulls in my hand at a conference that he had brought. Had some real interesting conversations with him. So here's what I'm talking about when I talk about the Paracas Peru skulls. There are skulls in this world that are different than what we would call a normal human skull. And a lot of people will scoff and go, "That's just head binding." Well, some of them are and some of them are not. He's had some fascinating research done on this, and they have found that a true Paracas skull is the interior is, I think it's like 25% larger than any kind of a normal human skull. Now, if they're just have head binding, it's the same volume inside. It's just been shaped differently. This is where they bind their infant's head with a cloth and make it move into a different direction instead of getting round. But that's not what this is. In this book, there's an artist named Marcia K Moore, and she is one of the people who does 3D modeling. And she has done that with the Paracas skulls and found it's fascinating to me to see what these people would have looked like because I always wonder if you ran onto somebody like this in the grocery store or you saw them on the evening news or something, what would they actually look like in person? That's what I used to think every time I saw these skulls. But I love how she has done this rendition because I'll tell you what, I think we would notice there's something different about these people, right? This just isn't the normal human skull. So she is modeling the Paracas and bringing these ancient enigmatic people back to life. And again, you just have to wonder, where did they come from? Post-flood astrology is centered on man and what will happen to him on a daily basis. Astrology was no longer used for predicting the next time a magic rite would work. When the Chaldeans added the horoscope, it then became man centered. Hippolytus, in his book on heresies, stated if there were any truth in the idea of the horoscope, it would be based on conception, not birth, therefore, it must be false. The idea of astrology was to find out what could happen to a particular person on a specific day. If Mars or Venus was in the right position based on where they were when that person was born, then their finances or love life might improve if they acted today. Perhaps today may or may not be the best time for that person to start a fight or a business. And I know when I was growing up, we didn't have all the entertainment that we have today. I think we had 3 channels on TV, and it was with rabbit ears, so it wasn't all that great a lot of the times anyway. We didn't have the internet, lived in an incredibly small town with a very small library, which I kept turned over. I've read since I was 4 and always fascinated with different pieces of information. But one of the things that we loved to do is back then, everyone got a paper newspaper every day. And we'd get it, and the first thing we would do is read the comic strip, and then second thing we would do was read our horoscope. Now, I come from a family that no one ever taught me that was wrong, and I can remember being really irritated with my pastor the first time when he talked about this and said we didn't need to be doing this because I'm like, why. But as I began to study and figure things out, I can see why now. It's going to something besides the God of heaven to get answers to make decisions for your life, and it goes all the way back to this post-flood paganism. And our pastor didn't teach us why; he just said, "Don't do it; it's wrong." So that's one reason I like to break this down and teach you why, because well, there's all those answers of why is this wrong, why is that wrong. I want to know if it's right or wrong. And again, it comes back to me. Which bucket does it go in? Who does it serve? Who does it worship? What's the purpose? Because I'm a person now, it's like the word why is continually stuck in my head, and I just need that answers. Remember that old show where they had the robot and he was always going input, input, input. My sisters used to laugh at me and my family at the time. They go, "That is you." And I owned it. So the idea of astrology, again, was to find out what would happen to a particular person on a specific day. So with that was a reason that they went to it instead of the God of the Bible. Astrology is also based on the gods and goddesses who were just men and women long ago, long since dead and buried. So, doesn't that mean that modern astrology is really a joke? And remember, they made goddess and goddesses out of the heads of their dead ancestors. Sometimes they would kill them to make these teraphim. And so, this was what they were going to get answers. Long dead people that they now called gods and goddesses, and they believed that they were becoming that as well. So knowing this instantly frees us from being enslaved to us. Church Father Tatian said it best. Demons invented the concept of fate with astrology to enslave men into worshiping them. He said this in his writing to the Greeks in chapter number 9. Right, the other ancient church fathers described astrology in this way. The arts of astrologers, soothsayers, augurs, and magicians were were known by the angels who sinned. Let me start that all over again. Arts of astrologers, soothsayers, augurs, and magicians were made known by the angels who sinned, and they're forbidden by God. This is Tertullian in his book on apology. Astrology is idolatry, he says in his book on idolatry. Origen, in his book against Celsus, says Christians do not employ incantations or spells to perform miracles. So he tells us right out we're not supposed to be doing this stuff. The other ancient church fathers described it in this way. Tertullian again says Christians don't blame fate or stars for their actions. Lactantius, in his Divine Institute, says demons invented astrology, soothsaying, divination, and those productions which are called oracles, necromancy, and the art of magic. The church does not perform anything by means of angelic invocations, incantations, or by any other wicked, curious art, or by directing her prayers to the Lord. This is Irenaeus in his book Against Heresies. He also says God is not to be sought after by means of letters, syllables, or numbers. Now, if you want to know more about these church fathers, there's two places that I always send people. First thing that I learned, if you go to Skywatch TV, it might be skywatch.tv now. Tom Horn's site, and his children still keep this up, but you can get this researcher's library of ancient texts. There's 5 volumes for only $125, and they are well worth your money. You're going to get, let me blow this up just a little bit for myself. You're gonna get the Library of Ancient Texts, the Apocrypha, the Septuagint, the Apostolic Fathers, the Reformers, and the Preachers of the Great Awakening. Sorry about that. I had to look behind me on the shelf behind me because it only shows 4 of them on this slide, and I always forget what the other one is. I have used this again and again and again and again. And again, the ancient church fathers are the disciples of the disciples and their disciples. All right, let's look at the priest of Baal just a little bit. Elijah confronted the priest of Baal on Mount Carmel. Notice the prophet simply prayed to God and his prayer was answered, while the priest of Baal danced in frenzy and cut themselves. This again shows the pagans trying to get into an altered state of consciousness while the true believer just prays, and prayer is just talking to God. The priests of Baal danced themselves into a frenzy and cut themselves. This kind of meditative technique is called dynamic meditation. It's the same kind of practice performed in Hindu ashrams. This dynamic meditation is the ashrams revolves, jumping up and down, whirling around with constant motion, and then all of a sudden, at the sound of a bell, all motion stops. This is supposed to throw the practitioner into what? That thing we've been talking about, an altered state of consciousness. This is where their consciousness is set to the side and another spirit enters their mind and speaks to them. We've all seen this in movies. All right, next week, we'll start talking about paganism in the Middle Ages. We'll break down a little bit about Jewish Kabbalah and this magic circle, and we'll talk about some more things. Right now, I want to talk to you a little bit about my new book series that's out, and I'll show you the cover for the next one. Let me see if I can get this to play for you right quick. Folks, don't forget to check out my new book series, Prepare for the End. Just go to rinalynn.com and click on any book cover, and it'll take you straight to Amazon. You can get them in paperback or ebooks. If you like good love stories, drama, espionage, crime, struggling people who've lost their way and need help from those around them, it has it all. It's a classic saga of good versus evil, chock full of visits from the angelic realm from players on both sides. We have two groups of families that have been at war for over a century in Central Texas, and those that serve the dark side are fueled by the Serpent King, who is determined to take out God's men and women before they can stop the evil he leads his followers to do. Each side is determined to represent their God well, and as in Old Testament times, sometimes Jesus himself makes an appearance to speak to his faithful followers and call them to task for end time events. People shockingly change sides, and it's a race to see who will make it through to stand before God and hear, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Go to rinalynn.com and help me get God's word out through my characters and their struggles to understand why they're so attacked. Send the link to your friends and help me be successful at the task that God's given me. While you're there, leave a donation to help with publishing and radio costs. A good way to do that is with a one time donation, but also you can set up a small monthly recurring donation that I can count on to make sure I can keep the new books coming. Sometimes they're delayed while I save the funds. You can also click into rena-thatinsurancechick.com and send me a contact form, and I'll get you an insurance quote. I have an A+ accredited Better Business Bureau rating, and everyone needs the products I offer. Drop me an email and share your story or your job. It helps me get the characters authentic. And if you'll look, this is the book 6, be out soon. I was gonna do it this weekend. I got tied up in something else, so I'm gonna try to get this out hopefully by next weekend and get it up for you. Go to rinalynn.com, check out our affiliates page, and this is brought to you by our sponsors, the Grand Empress Tea Salon, Simply Clean Foods, and the Brighteon store with Mike Adams. So if you'll go there and if you'll click in through my affiliates page, they'll kick just a little bit back to keep us on air. And I appreciate it if you'd hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And if you want to help me with all the cost of all this, just hit that donate button while you're there. But be sure and go to Amazon, get the first book. If you're behind, get caught up because this story is really getting good. And when I'm telling you, when pagans and the Christians go head to head, all bets are off. I'll see you next week on the Total Freedom Show with Ancient Paganism class. Bye.